What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Captain Trucker here, reporting to you from the Midwest. Good to see everybody today. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I want to continue our conversation about, well, why Americans are having trouble understanding the Philippines culture, but also what the future could be for the Philippines culture with more of an influx, with more of an influence of us Americans and Europeans, okay? What that could look like for the Philippines, for better or worse. And I want to say right off, like the last video we posted, we were talking about the amount of expats currently in the Philippines. The State Department, the US State Department, has that at around 300,000. Some other sites say different things, but some of those numbers, the statistics could vary because there might be some confusion as far as tourists and expats, right? And apparently in the past, and that number has been increasing in recent years due to social media, a lot more vlog and a lot more exposure. So we're going to see more Americans in the future go into these countries, okay? I estimate it could be as high as 1 million Americans by 2034. So what does that mean, right? It's interesting because talking about this in the last video from the Filipinos on the channel, it was kind of a mixed response. I'd say about maybe 80% of the Filipinos would casually say like, oh, we love Americans, we want more Americans, not just Americans, Europeans too. I just say America because I'm American, but we'll get to that later. They say, yeah, we welcome more Americans, we want more Americans to come here, it's gonna help our, economy and stuff. And even some Filipinos are saying, yeah, I hope that Americans can even own land and businesses here one day. But here's part of the problem. Now I want to take this back not so much to economics, but I want to talk more in this video about the culture, about the mentality of my people and also Westerners, and why it can be potentially problematic for the Filipinos influence-wise, okay? Because as we all know, there was history of Spanish American colonialism in that country in the past. Technically it's an independent nation now, it's no longer colonized, but there's theories, arguably, but that there's neo-colonialism, or what I call neo-social media colonialism. Basically indirect influence that has a form of control. Okay. But here's the thing. Here's why us Americans are having trouble understanding the Philippine culture, and why us expats even have trouble adjusting once we're there, okay? To survive, to thrive, to do well, is we are so hooked. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. We are so consumed by consumerism with materialism to the core in this country, okay? And it's a serious problem, folks. It really is, and I can't overemphasize that enough. And just so much stuff we don't need to have. We spend on credit card debts, ridiculous. The country itself is 33+ trillion in debt. It's not good, There's a lot of concerns for the future, okay? That's why there's a lot of divisions right now in America with this party system, which is a whole other story. I mean, why is there, they say America's divided, but there's like 2 party choices. Like, okay, duh, right? Anyway, that's another video. But what does that mean? That as far as the culture, okay? So much emphasis. And this is why, like, we have trouble adjusting to go into like these poor countries, these less developed countries, because we're so accustomed to just bougie, weird things we don't need and like super fast service, right? That I guess things don't go our way and we get impatient. A lot of some expats, man, I've heard stories about guys like starting fights. Some expats have lost their minds, they'll just snap after being there like 6 or 8 months. I'm not even kidding. They get so impatient and so irritable in a restaurant, they'll, order a sandwich or something, doesn't come to their liking. I've seen expats like berate like a young Filipino girl, like waitress. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, you combine that with some expats going over there in poverty, they develop alcoholism. It's just a mess, So we can't put all expats in the same category though, but it's stuff to definitely be mindful of. But back to that impatience and that kind of, just the lifestyle here Americans are so stressed out, they're so angry, okay? Unlike the Filipinos, who are actually, in fact, relatively in poverty compared to Westerners, right? But we don't see that same heaviness. We don't see the seriousness in the eyes, the burden of stress and anger. And I'm not even exaggerating. Don't get me wrong. These countries you have, you know, depressed people, obviously, and there's this stuff that comes with poverty, no doubt. But I'll say I've never seen a place like in the slums of Manila, and I've seen still people smiling, you know, kids still content playing with sticks and basic things and recycled toys and stuff like that, you know, used clothes, tattered clothes, kids that are happy, and it's remarkable. It really is. And it's such a testament to the Filipino spirit and resilience and just kind of the way they are. And you know, one thing I learned, and it took me, I'd say, at least probably a year or 2 years to adjust living there, because for me it was like really it wasn't right away, and I'm a younger man than some of these older expats. It took me a while to adjust too, but that concept of being contentment, I learned that from the Filipinos, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's something that Americans, that we need to learn, and Europeans. And we lack that, and it goes back a long ways. It's complicated. You know, there's good and bad things in capitalism and all that, but the emphasis on materialism is insane, folks. I mean, like I've said this before, man, like the middle class is drowning in debt. They're buying stuff, new cars. I'm surrounded by new cars all over this country, okay? By just common people that make a common wage. We're putting ourselves in debt because the American dream has become this perverse illusion that's always tied to material, okay? So we have this high divorce rate too. People are getting married to maintain a status quo, to live a certain material lifestyle. And this is why I've even said before, like, it's not the worst thing in the world for some middle-class Joneses and other people to start living in their cars. I lived in my car. I saved quite a bit of money. Taught me to be more simplistic. It got me prepared to be an expat in the Philippines. Less is more, right? So that's part of the problem, all right? And the stress to maintain that lifestyle, of course, then we get into, like, you know, the somewhat self-created mental illness in the culture. You got 1 in 5 Americans, 66+ million on psychotropic meds, not to mention recreational stuff people are probably taking. And it's a problem, man. It's a real shame. And you don't get that level, again, of stress in these other types of countries. But the point is that we're doing this to ourselves, us Americans, and this is the mentality of that, okay? And I'm not even saying it's all Americans' fault. You get Europeans like this too. These type of programming can be a bad influence on other countries, man. Because here's the thing, like, if the Filipinos on the channel talking about, and the ones I've talked to about more Americans coming, they're like, yeah, that's awesome, let's bring it up. But there's about 20%, I'll say, who are a bit more critical, who are a bit more like, yeah, that may not be the best thing. Because, well, I mean, in terms of economy, it can also raise local consumer prices and stuff like that. But these, I'm trying to tell you folks, this isn't I'm not trying to be hard on my own people, but this is messages for the Filipinos too. I'm telling you, man, the attitudes of my people, I think in a large mass influence of control, I think it's dangerous to your culture. I really do. And I'm not telling people what to do. It's, you know, we're foreigners in foreign lands, man. It's like, I'm just talking about boundaries. This is my opinion of my people. Okay, and I love America, and it's a great place. It's where I've worked. My family's from. I come from a huge family. I've lived in, you know, 3 different states on the coast in the south, big cities, small towns, countries. I've been to every state except Alaska. I've traveled extensively throughout states. I've known a lot of people in my 40+ years on Earth. I understand my people of Americans. Okay, and I love them, but I'm trying to tell the Filipinos, Americans are a danger to themselves, okay? And I'm telling you, some of their influence unintentionally can be problematic for other places, okay? We have weird relationships with money. You know, somebody who I admire in history, in Philippines history, is this fellow named, and forgive me if I'm saying his name wrong, Papa Ezio, okay? Negros Occidental, late 1800s. He ran marathons too, apparently, or marathon-like races or something. So Negros Occidental, I believe, was known for like their sugarcane and stuff like that, a lot of sugarcane businesses. So anyway, the Spanish were there, and to my understanding, maybe some people were starting to buy up, foreigners starting to buy up their sugar and stuff, and I think, and then Americans started doing it, and I think this guy, Papa Ezio, he was basically like, no, like, we're not, you know, I'm not selling this to you. This isn't yours. Like, you're not going to come here, take something that's not yours, profit off it, take our women and do whatever you want because you give me some pesos, you know? Like, he wasn't having it. And he fought the Americans. He fought the Spanish. And, excuse me, yeah, anyway, sorry. Got to get my history right. He fought them, like, at the turn of the century, late 1800s to early 1900s. And, you know, he was a big hero, and they even named the rum after him, Don Papa Rum, for those of you who don't know. Yeah, look up Papa Ezio. He's an interesting character. But it reminds me of some of the commenters on the channel, like some of the, like I said, because this is the thing. We haven't adjusted culturally or evolved as Americans or Europeans to these countries that really had a history of withstanding, of resilience, just not just because of colonialization, but geographically, like sustaining the, you know, the Pacific Rim, or Rim of Fire, I think it's called. They've survived countless natural disasters, as well as stuff other people have done there. So they've developed that simplicity and contentment, and they're happy with that, okay? That's something that we don't have as Westerners, all right? Now, take money out of the equation. That can be a negative influence on these other places, okay? As far as neo-colonialism that I'm talking about, all right? And that's not even talking about economic stuff. I'm not going to go there in this video, but it's just something to keep in mind. With that kind of nature that we have in the West, our relationship with money and material doesn't just stop at like, oh, I want a good deal, you know, I want to pay less for something, I want to be a good salesman, get something over on something. They'll take that to another level, okay? They'll take that to the point of like, well, you know, with regards to certain types of tourism, like, you know, one can go there, and as long as she's of legal age, if I give somebody money, that's all that matters is money. I can do whatever I want, right? That's the attitude. That's one of the other dangers, and that's kind of some of what's been happening, I think. That's my theory. But it's just a small, like in social media and this other stuff, it's a small fraction of a, you know, bigger stuff in the world going on. But again, it's about boundaries, not just boundaries as tourists and expats, but even boundaries as vloggers. That's why I only talk about certain things, because it's appropriate. I mean, what the Filipinos do, that's their business. I'm talking about Americans and Europeans, you know? So that's the difference. And I think we have issues sometimes with boundaries as Americans. And as, you know, I see the English like this too, and the Germans. So those are just my observations, and that's kind of my concern. And I guess this message is not just for the expats that want to go out there, but also for the Filipinos to be mindful of that there's a lot of good traits in Americans, man. There's a lot of really good people here, right? Because of the powers that be, Americans have kind of turned on each other, and they're mixed up. I mean, the consumerism, the materialism, it's so severe in the West, man. The overindulgences, it's amazing. It really is. Because, you know, some of these other cultures, for the ones who maybe not as familiar with American stuff, there's always this idea of like, yeah, you know, we want this to be a developed country like America. Do you really? I mean, I think personally, I think developed countries are overrated. I don't think it necessarily improves the quality of life and happiness. I really don't. I mean that sincerely. I think you got to have like medicine and water, clean water and food. But other than that, I mean, they talk like infrastructure, like, you know, I mean, like, you don't want to live in a crumbling building. Sorry, that's stupid. No, but I'm serious. Like, you know, roads, good internet connection. This is all like, yeah, that's nice to have, but at what cost, right? That's all I'm saying, man. I mean, we got to get over this like individualism and become more collective attitude as Americans go into the Philippines. That's how we're going to adjust, man. I mean, deprogramming, that's kind of a heavy word that's used to describe generally more extreme type of stuff, but I mean, maybe it's relative. So I guess my advice to us expats going out there is like, you know, just, you know, be cool, man. Understand your boundaries. Understand your role as a foreigner. Because being a foreigner itself can be a cool thing. Like, you don't have to own land. You don't have to own a house. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to, you're not a citizen. So you should embrace the role of being an outsider. And there's something to be learned from that. There's something special, I think, that comes from just being a traveler, like a foreign man in a foreign land. And that's the part we got to learn, I think. One of the things. There's a lot of things we got to learn. And it's been, you know, a good experience for me starting to learn this stuff and seeing this stuff in my people. It's a good thing, man. And I hope that more people are able to visit other countries and stuff. But anyway, that's my speech for the day. But back on, yeah. Colonialism, neo-colonialism, it's an interesting topic. It's a very heavy subject that I'm kind of scratching the surface on. I want to get more information for you guys in the future. But we'll just keep the conversation going. Please comment. I want to know what you all think about this. I want to know what the Filipinos think. Also, you know, what us Westerners think, Americans, Europeans. Like, tell me your thoughts on this. We've had a lot of good dialogue on the channel recently. And I read all the comments. And some of you are writing really good comments, and it's hard to just like, I can get the time to like properly respond, man, because I don't want to just give a flippant response to when people take time to write, you know, good stuff. So I appreciate it, and let's continue doing it. All right, it's Captain Trucker. Please subscribe. You guys be well. Take care. Bye-bye.